Welcome everybody to our Ask an Expert series. This is episode 10, which is truly incredible. Today I have the one and only, the amazing, my very good friend, Stephanie Virchaux. She's an incredible life coach, and she's here to join us today to talk about waiting out of pandemic and making 2020 our best year yet. Stephanie, how are you doing today?
Hey, Alex, I am so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm really looking forward to having this conversation.
Yeah, likewise. So this is heavy stuff, and we're going to be talking about a lot. If you guys have questions, feel free to drop them into the chat box, drop them in on Facebook. I'm going to ask that Jared kind of monitor any comments or questions that are coming in, and feel free to kind of chime in when it makes sense. But Steph, I want to know more about who you are. How'd you get into coaching? What's your background?
Yeah, I love that. That's such a good question, especially with coaching. There's these industries that people are like, what is that? I don't get it. It's a little weird, or like, who are these people? So I love that we're starting with calling it out. So I came from a corporate background. I was in marketing, corporate America, working for big companies. The last big company I was with was L'Oreal. So it's like literally the #1 beauty company doing marketing and PR. And I had what I called a quarter life crisis, right? After like 12 years, not really quarter, but let's just for purposes and all intents, call it quarter. I sort of started questioning, like what I was doing, was it fulfilling? And really asking myself, like, what's going on? Do I want to continue climbing the corporate ladder? And I think that's when I realized, like, there's something here that's not working out, and asking myself, like, what do I do? Right. So I looked online, and I had gone to therapy, back in the day. I'm a big proponent of therapy, but it didn't feel like it was a therapy thing. So I hired a coach, made a huge difference in my life. I loved it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get certified, go to coaching school in case I go through another quarter life crisis. I'm going to know, what to do, have techniques and tips and like all these things. Started coaching school, still working full time, and I fell in love with coaching. Literally, it's like the skies parted after the first weekend intensive, and it's like, this is what you're meant to do with your life. So I ended up getting certified a year later, and then I quit and started my business, and this was 3.5 years ago.
Wow, extraordinary. What a journey, do you know? And I think a lot of people are in that, yeah, right? What a journey. I think a lot of people are in this similar space where they're unhappy, they feel stuck. But let's look and zoom into what's happening today, right? We're dealing with two pandemics. One, a health pandemic, COVID-19, a virus that people that can kill people, that's totally changed our economic, financial future. And then on top of that, we're dealing with tremendous social injustice. Black Lives Matter, deaths at the hands of law enforcement. Mm-hmm. What do you recommend on how we could just kind of show up for people in our lives? A friend that has maybe lost a job, or a friend that is dealing, with some frustration around, these senseless deaths. What are your suggestions for like active listening and just being there for someone?
Yeah. I think it's such an important thing to bring into mind, and it is heavy, right? And it's complex and it's layered, but it's the world that we're living in now. So, when it comes to the pandemic, I think it's always checking in with yourself, because there's this thing that's called the collective consciousness. Right? So we each have a consciousness and awareness, the way we think as human beings. But there's also the consciousness and the awareness of the entire world, right? So as you're going through the day, it's like, okay, am I tapped into the collective consciousness, which right now there is a lot of fear and there is a lot of change. And it's not to say that's not good or bad or whatever. It's to say, is it me, right? Am I the one thinking? Am I taking action through my own thoughts? Or am I plugged into the collective consciousness and taking action from that place? So I think this times is so important to have insight and awareness on our own thoughts, right? What do we stand for? What are the things that are triggering? What are the things that we need to learn about? If we have anxiety, if we have fear, to making sure that we're not numbing and avoiding and using, drugs or alcohol or sex or whatever it is as tools to avoid and numb the heaviness, and be like, let me look at these things. Let me be super aware and open to what is it that's going on in the back of my head, so I'm able to deal with it and manage it instead of like avoiding it and shoving it under the rug.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Just deal with what is. Don't try to change it or make it something else, and give yourself the luxury of feeling, of processing it.
Ah,
And
I
and
love that you
sometimes
said
feelings
that.
are not comfortable, but
Right.
we're human beings. We were born with feelings. If you look at a little child, one minute it's happy, next minute it's happy, the next minute it's hungry. It goes through all those things quickly. Ideally, we as human beings should be able to have that fluidity with our emotions as well. I think if we really give over and not try to hold on to something or fight it, you know?
That's what it is. It's like if you imagine, a piano and you have like really high notes, like me, I
Uh,
can't even go that high, really low notes.
uh,
As humans, thank you, we tend to play in the middle. It's like I can't go too high because I might be crazy, or I might be too sensitive, or I might be too much. And I can't go too low because I'm scared that I won't be able to handle my emotions. And the idea is play the entire range of the piano when it comes to your emotions, right? When you're listening to like Beethoven or any of this incredible, or any music for that matter, you love the music and you love the song and it touches your heart because it's touching upon every single range of the piano, right? If you were to hear a song that's always here, you'd be like, oh my goodness, I'm so bored of this. It doesn't do anything for me. But if you allow yourself to fully play all high or low or in the middle, then you're fully living your life.
yeah, that's really great advice. I thought of two things as you were talking about that. I have an acting background, and my acting teacher used to always say to us, play full out with yourself.
Yes.
Like you have tears of joy, you have murderous rage, you're alive. And it sounds like what you're saying to us is be alive, enjoy
Yes.
things of life. Yeah, we can go through really dark times, but we can also go through such amazing times. And life is about that journey, that up and down,
Like just hold on to it and go with, like, you're riding the wave. Like an hour ago, I was doing yoga. At the end of it, we were meditating. I was literally bawling my eyes out for like 15 minutes. And it's like, okay, let me go let me play fully on that. And now we're having this conversation, and it's not like I had a bad morning or a serious, it was just like, those were those emotions that had to come out. And right now, so, it's that constant movement. When it comes to the Black Lives Matter, it's a different way to approach it, but not to gloss over that question that you had. Look, there are many different layers, and I think all of us, based on where we come from and our beliefs and our systems, we can all learn something from this. I have a privilege to be in an interracial relationship and being able to have somebody that I can ask maybe tough questions or things that I don't know without being afraid of stepping into it, right? A lot of people like to say, I'm afraid to step into this thing because I don't know how I'm going to look. And the idea is to say, you're going to step into it and it's going to be uncomfortable, but it's better than not doing anything at all because I'm afraid of what it might come out. So go in, ask, learn, take action, whether it's donating, whether it's protesting. The one thing, in my opinion, not to do is to stay back and stay silent because you're afraid of what might come out of it.
No, that's really great advice. And ironically, I sent out my newsletter today that included some links to documentaries, books that people can read just to try to understand more about the African American experience, and just to get it, to try to understand and to have empathy, which I think would be
Yeah,
really powerful. I know you
absolutely.
work with a myriad of different types of clients. What are common problems that people are bringing up to you today?
Yeah. There has been, let's see, there's been two patterns, if you will, on that component. So the first thing is people have a lot more time, or they've had a lot more time the past 3 months. So with this time, they've it's almost like they can't hide from the fact that I don't like what I'm doing, right? So before, when people were really busy and doing all these things, they could hide behind the excuse of, I'm too busy, I don't have time to think about what I want to do with my life. And now they have a lot of time in their hands, and they're saying like, okay, now I cannot hide anymore behind it. So the biggest thing that I've seen with my clients is sort of like lifting the veil of I am no longer able or willing to hide and avoid realizing that what I'm doing is not fulfilling. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is people really wanting to work for somebody and a company, for themselves, whatever it might be, in a way that's really fulfilling. Like the patterns that I've seen with my clients, it's like if I don't support the company that I work for, I will be quitting within the next few months.
That's a big thing that I've noticed recently is that, do we still have speaker mode going on? Just want to make sure. Okay, cool. You know, that's something that I think is really important is understanding where you are currently and kind of where you need to go and being in alignment, right? Being connected with your mission, with your values and, you know, what you want, your purpose, right? So do you have any suggestions for exercises that people can do to try to reconnect with who they are, like with what matters to them, with their values?
Yeah, values are so important. I love that you brought that up. Values are, in essence, principles by which we live by, right? So, like, I know you, I know that you value humor, you value human connection, right? You value physical well being, right? Like, these are the things that I think, as I know you, as my friend Alex, like, you value, right? So, all of us have this set of things that we value, principles by which we live our lives. When we are doing things that honor those values, right? So let's say if you're connecting with others, if you're working out, if you're taking care of you, you're going to feel like there's a ton of energy in your life because the things that you honor, that your principles that you value, you're honoring them. So you're super excited. On the other hand, if you, let's say, never work out, if you're never connecting with others, maybe right now you've been on your own a lot and it feels a little bit harder, you're disrespecting your values. And that's gonna drain and suck energy away from you because you're basically saying, I'm not doing the things that I value. So for anybody that's listening, it's to say, okay, like, where do I start? Because there are so many things going on. Go online, pull up a list of values. There are so many of them, and start rating yourself and figure out a 1 to 10. 10, this is really important to me. 1, I could care less about this thing. Rate, a list of values and start taking action in your life towards honoring those values. And the second component, I would say, for the company that you work with, figure out what are your company's values. Some of you that are listening might have never thought about understanding what do the company value. If your company's value are totally opposite than your own, that might be a sign to say, okay, this may not be the right fit for me, unless you make a choice to stay there in order to get what you want to get from that company.
Wow, that's really great advice. I love that. Google values, circle the ones that you like and kind of ruminate on them, the ones that you really connect with. And then also think about your company, and see where you guys have alignment. And that may, kind of help someone feel a lot better and get them excited and rejigger
Absolutely.
to really bring it,
Yes. Or it might be to say, like, look, when I did this exercise for me, I realized that authenticity is a big value for me, right? And you know this, I'm really spiritual. I'm very woo-woo. I bring a lot of, science and practical sort of combining all together. And when I was in corporate, my own limiting beliefs, I thought that I couldn't be authentic, right? Because if I was bringing crystals to work and talking about angels or coaching or spirituality and energy and all those things, people might be like, I don't know about this. I don't know about this marketer that's handling our budget or whatever it might be. So I realized for me, my own limiting belief, I couldn't be authentic in that corporate environment, right? So I chose in that case to be like, okay, it's time for me to exit. So ultimately, if your values disalign with the company, you always have a choice. I want to stay because I'm getting a great paycheck or I still love what I do, knowing that I can be authentic at work. Or you might choose, you know what, I want to fully live my life. I want to be authentic in all areas. It's time for me to go. But it allows you to make a conscious decision towards the things that you're doing.
Yeah. I just think that is such an important takeaway for people. If you are not being authentic in your life, you're going to feel miserable. Do you know that? Because you're not just being your true self.
Right.
Someone said to me once, a tree is a tree. It doesn't try to be anything else. Do you know? And I thought like that was such interesting advice. It's like, you're Stephanie. Don't try to be like Kelly or Bobby. Be
Right.
Stephanie, you know? And me as a real estate broker, I think a lot of times people are like, oh, he's a little bit too silly or goofy or whatever. But that's my authentic nature. And if I
Yeah.
wasn't that being, no one would want to be around me or engage with me.
Right.
So, and because I am being my authentic self, I'm having a fun time. And I think that energy is infectious. And I think this ties really well into talking about vulnerability. Because
Mm-hmm.
especially now, like as people are dealing with these two pandemics, maybe being in a tough financial situation or just being frustrated by, the social unrest, I think there's something really innately human when we just share our humanity and not try to hide it and say, oh, I'm
Yes.
doing great. This
Right.
virus isn't messing with me,
Yes.
So what are your thoughts on that? Just about kind of opening up this persona that we try to hide ourselves and just sharing our vulnerability as a human.
I love it. It's so liberating. When I think of vulnerability, obviously, first thing, most things that are come to mind is Brene Brown, right? Because, and
Yes,
if
she's
whoever's
very big right
listening,
now.
right, if you haven't heard of her, like she has a Netflix thing out and she has so many books and she literally studies vulnerability. So the first thing is fine, Brene, love her, so much to learn from her. And the other thing that I think about when it comes to vulnerability is removing our masks, right? And what I mean by that is we have these masks like, I'm a woman, I'm a coach, I'm a business owner, you're a man, you're a broker, you're tough. We have all these masks by which almost like prop us up in front of society, right? So when you get a call, hey, how are you? Well, if I'm a coach or if I'm a woman, I need to be perfect. Of course I'm okay. And that moment, you create a distance between the person, the conversation, and yourself. Because you may not be okay, right? Or you might be like, you know what, I'm really worried about this. But when you actually allow yourself to be vulnerable and be like, you know what, I'm going through a really interesting time. Or you know what, I'm having a hard time with this. Or I just had a great call with a potential client. I am so excited about it. Whatever it is, it's like have enough respect for you and the person to meet yourself where you're at instead of coming out with, like you said, I'm great, things are great, how can I help you? So I think vulnerability allows us to remove all these masks and show up to that conversation truly coming from our hearts, right? And even with everything that's going on now, that's finally coming out more and more to the surface, coming from a place of heart is truly where the change is going to happen and where those authentic connections are going to come.
Wow. That was really powerful. I'm just going to let that marinate for a second. Come from heart, and that's where the change will come. Wow. That's really beautiful. Thanks for saying that. I'm just processing. It's really just like,
Sit with it.
Yesterday I got to do a talk back about real estate to a bunch of young agents. And when I was done with the interview, the host said to me, thank you so much for sharing so much heart. And, after it was done, I got all these messages from agents and emails and texts and things. And they were like, thank you so much for sharing. And really all I wanted to do was be authentic, to try to help and to give of my heart, not pretend like, oh, like I'm killing, like just tell it how it is.
Vulnerability.
Yes. Yeah. And that created a high level of human connection where they felt seen because I was talking to them, not at them. And I felt seen, so I think when we come to life with our humanity, our vulnerability, our authenticity, it helps us have better human connections, which is ultimately what's going to make us happier.
It's that fulfilling.
Because human beings are community beings. We're social. So I think a lot
connection, yes.
Because we're lonely and we're by ourselves, and we're kind of lost.
And I love that you said ultimately vulnerability also allows you to be seen, right? And we all crave, we want to be seen because that's where we have that connection. So if we're not vulnerable and we're like, we're okay, I don't want to talk about it, or I'm good, or I can handle it on my own, or I'm strong, you're not allowing others to see you, right? And ultimately, that's what we want the most. We want to be seen, we want to be heard, we want to be loved as we are. But if we're not vulnerable, we're showing up with all these masks. It's like, nobody sees me, nobody understands me. Yeah, because you have like 1,000 masks as a shield in front of you. Of course we can't see you because we don't even know what you're thinking about. So it sort of ends up being this toxic cycle we end up finding ourselves in little by little. Like, allow that heart to be open, come in from that place, and that you will get to be seen and live life being so much more feeling fulfilled.
Yeah, that's great advice. Write that down. Take off your masks. You don't need them. And I think a great example of that is Cardi B. She
Okay,
is
let's hear it.
100% herself, and people
Yeah.
love her. And she's a multi-billionaire maybe at this point, do you know? And do you think she's ever like, should I say this? I wonder what people will think. No, she, it's a coronavirus,
Right,
very big
right.
TikTok meme that was going on. But again, be yourself, and you'll probably find a lot of joy with that. I wanted to read this quote because I thought it was so interesting. It's about normal, all right?
Okay.
And as we're shifting to a new normal and wondering if the past normal was a real normal, let me just read this quote and maybe we can just talk about it for a second. Normal is getting dressed in clothes that you buy for work and driving through traffic in a car that you are still paying for in order to get to the job you need to pay for the clothes and the car and the house you leave vacant all day so you can afford to live in it. Ellen Goodman, she's a journalist. And I think this is about 5 or 10 years ago. So
Okay.
now we're living in a world where you're not going to drive to your job, right? You're going to be working from home probably for the foreseeable future, right? So what is normal? Is there a normal? How do we define normalcy?
I love that. Well, first I want to start, and when you were writing the quote, I'm like, oh yeah, now it was sinking in. I feel like I've definitely seen that here and there. I love to start by saying, let's not create a new normal, but let's create a better normal, right? So this better normal, anti-racism, this better normal where we don't just have a job that we have in order to pay for our houses and our cars and our homes, right? This better normal where we show up without our masks, this better normal where we align our values with our actions, where we align our values with what we do. So it's almost like stripping ourselves from our clothes and our cars and our houses, right? All these things, all these masks we have created, and using this time to create a better normal for us, our society, and ultimately the world.
Yeah, agreed. This might be a great segue to talk about joy method, right? Because it's about, I think, making a better life for yourself, right? Finding joy, but you're the creator of the joy method, so I'll let you talk about it.
I love that. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, Joy Method is my group coaching program. It's an 8-week group coaching program that I started at the end of last year. And, taking our masks off, right? And fully showing up. So last year, I was pregnant for a few months. And we knew each other at this time. And at some point, my beautiful baby decided to cross over and for now not have this human experience. And I remember I was getting ready to launch the Joy Method for the first time when she transitioned. And I sat with it and I'm like, well, what do I do? Like, I obviously took a break from life, right? From everything that I was doing. And then I was like sitting and meditating and praying and asking God and my angels and sort of like, what do I do with this program that I've been working on for a few months? And I was ready to launch it to the world. And it was so loud and so clear. It's like, you are giving birth to the Joy Method, right? You might have not given birth to, a physical baby, but you're giving birth to this program called the Joy Method. And in essence, it's 8 weeks where you get to take a look at every area in your life, right? You get to take a look at money. You get to take a look at boundaries. You take a look at your past and things that you're carrying with yourself that are weighing you down. You get to get clear on what future do you want to create. We take a look at self-care. We literally go through all the areas in your life that in essence make up everything that we touch. And we get to evaluate and create and declare, this is how I want to show up in my life, right? With my money, with my boundaries, with self-care, with people, with my family, all the areas that are part of us, and look at it from a place of joy. So joy actually stands for the journey of you. So the method is the journey of you and looking at all areas in your life So you find that fulfillment, and you're not just living life with 1,000 masks, unfulfilled, wearing these clothes in this car, and you don't even recognize your own life.
Yeah. Thank you so much for just being so forthright and honest, and I think being a role model for us to emulate, just sharing your heart, and your story is so honest and beautiful. But you mentioned something that I think was quite powerful. You talked about meditation, that you meditated on it. And I think for a lot of people listening, they may have never tried to meditate before, but it's something they consistently hear a lot about. What suggestions would you give to someone about just getting started in meditating?
Yeah, with meditation, if you are new to it, I suggest you look up and you find what it's called breath work, right? Breath work is a type of meditation, but I think a lot of us in the society, especially because we're always consuming and we have all these things going on, that if you tell somebody you got to sit for 5 minutes and not do anything, it's like, forget it, I'm not going there. However, with breath work, you are interacting with your breath, right? So it's like conscious, focus, breath movements that in essence allow the mind to quiet, because then the mind is going to be so focused on the breath that you are doing that you can't think, and it's not like you're sitting still, right? So if you're new to meditation, and even if you aren't, Google breath work. There are so many beautiful meditations that you can do with breath work. Breath work, what it does is it changes the pattern of your breath. So you're able to, in essence, get rid of old patterns and old habits that are stuck in your body that are no longer serving you. And you begin to cleanse yourself through your breath, but it's not just sitting there in complete silence. So that's what I would suggest to somebody that wants to begin. And it's like a win-win, right? Because one, you're meditating, and two, you're clearing yourself of all these beliefs and sort of like blockages that are holding you back.
Yeah,
Super
you nailed it.
powerful.
Yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly what I was going to say. Just based off of my acting background, we would do a lot of movement work and a lot of breath work to open up those blockages of emotion, of trapped
Get it
pain.
out.
Yeah, and then literally
Yeah.
you'd be in a class with someone and they'd be breathing, and then all of a sudden they'd be crying,
Yes.
45 years old, or, a 20-year-old woman. And it's like, people are carrying so much trauma. And to your point earlier, they're just distracting themselves, alcohol, taking care of work, being busy or whatever. They're never just still breathing, in connection with themselves. And if they do that, they may hear that that higher voice that says, you must birth the joy method and help others. This is your baby, and I know your
100%.
work has had such a tremendous impact on people. So that voice that you heard in that moment, what a blessing for the world to have that, so thank
What
you.
a blessing. Thank you for saying that. I really, really means
Absolutely,
a lot to me.
seriously. For those that don't know, I gave Stephanie a nickname. I called her the Oracle because
I love it.
literally, I don't know if you guys remember The Matrix. It's like 2 decades old now, but the Oracle was someone that Morpheus would bring people to decide if they were the one. And she was all seeing, and she could give such wise, helpful wisdom, and she kind of tells you what you need to hear. And she told Neo that he wasn't the one, because that's what he needed to hear to become the one. Boo, philosophy. We have to wrap up. We have 1 minute left. I'm just curious, do you have any resources that you would recommend for people about how they could maybe begin this process of life change, and definitely talk about how people can maybe work with you?
Yeah, I love that. I actually, where is it? Oh, I don't have it in front of me, but there's a book. It's called Letting Go by Dr. David Hawkins. And he basically shares in such a powerful way how to understand your emotions, right? Like grief and shame and guilt and all these things that you're like, I want to just hide and not deal with that. It's such a powerful book. So I would say, if you want to start getting in touch with your emotions, learning more about it and not shying away from it, get the book. Definitely start doing breath work. That's going to begin to release and a lot of stuck trauma. And lastly, I am really active on Instagram. So come hang out. It's at Stephanie Virchaux. And I'm sure we'll have it somewhere in here. And then also go to my website. I work with private clients. I have a joy method, a new round starting July 15th. So if you want to be a part of it, that would be incredible. But ultimately, I want to get comfortable with people and get to know people, right?
Lovely. So if you guys are listening, reach out to Steph, find her on Instagram. We'll make sure that all the links are associated with this video so you guys will have those resources. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, we spent 31 minutes talking about pandemic, talking about Black Lives Matter, talking about trying to make 2020 our best year yet. It's not a lot of time. It's just a beginning, but I hope you guys got a lot out of the chat. All right. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. Bye-bye.